The young Queen Scifi of Velrana sat on her crystal throne, surrounded by guards in shining armor. She was only 23 years old, but her eyes carried the weight of a long rule. Since she was 18, she had led her people through times of fear and tension. Her world was full of beauty. Silver towers touched the clouds and rivers of light flowed through the capital. But beneath that beauty lay deep worry. The humans from the blue planet beyond the veil had entered her star systems again, and this time, one of them had reached the surface of her own world. Scifi stood up, her silver gown catching the soft glow of the palace lamps. Her voice was calm but sharp as glass. "Find him," she ordered. "Bring the human to me alive. I will see him myself." Her soldiers bowed and left without question. The queen turned her gaze to the tall windows of her hall. Beyond them, she could see the twin moons shining over her empire. For her, humans were not just strangers, they were the reason for her pain. Years ago, her father had fallen in a border conflict when humans had first crossed the stars. Her mother had vanished soon after, during what was called a peace mission. No one ever found her. Scifi had grown up believing that humans brought only loss. Days passed. Reports came in one after another. The guards had found traces of the human near the edges of the capital, but each time they tried to catch him, he was gone. Some claimed he moved like a shadow. Others said he smiled at them before disappearing. Rumors began to spread among the people. Some said he was a spy. Others whispered that he came from the stars as a messenger. Even the guards who chased him said he had strange kindness in his eyes. He did not fight them even when cornered. Once he helped repair a broken food drone for the workers. Another time he carried an injured alien child out of a storm and left before anyone could thank him. The queen tried to ignore the stories, but every night she found herself thinking about him. Why would a human wander into her empire? Why would he risk his life to help her people? None of it made sense. One cold morning, before the sun rose over the spires, the palace was quiet. The guards at the main gate stood still as the great doors of the throne room began to open on their own. A tall figure stepped inside. His clothes were torn, his boots covered in dust. He carried no weapon, no armor, just a small satchel and calm eyes. Gasps echoed across the hall. The guards raised their energy spears, ready to strike, but the man didn't move. He simply looked at them and said, "I came to speak with your queen." When Scifi entered the room, her steps were slow and measured. The throne hall glowed with pale light, and her silver crown reflected it like fire. She stared at the human who had walked into her palace willingly. "You dare come here," she said coldly. "Knowing I ordered your capture?" The human bowed his head. "I know, your majesty." His voice was calm, respectful. "But I came because you need to hear the truth." The queen's eyes narrowed. "Truth? Humans have spoken of peace before. Each time it ended in betrayal." He didn't answer at once. His eyes met hers, not with pride, but with quiet sadness. "I am not here to fight you," he said. "I came because I knew your mother." The room fell silent. For a moment, the queen forgot to breathe. "My mother?" she whispered, stepping down from her throne. Her heart beat faster. "You dare speak her name?" "I was there," the man said softly. "She wasn't lost in battle. She came to Earth through the worm gate. She met my people. She met me." The queen's voice trembled. "You lie." "I don't," he replied, his tone steady. "Your mother believed peace between our worlds was possible. She came as a bridge between us. But when the worm gate failed, she stayed behind, not as a prisoner, but as a guardian. She helped build a place where both our kinds could live together. She asked us to wait until Velrana was ready to listen again." Scifi's breath caught in her throat. For years, the council had told her that her mother died in an explosion. Now this stranger spoke of her as alive, living on another world. The guards looked at each other in confusion. The queen lifted her hand to stop them. Her voice was quiet but firm. "Why come here? Why risk your life to tell me this?" He took a slow breath. "Because your mother sent one last message before the connection between our worlds broke. She said that one day, her daughter would rule Velrana, and when that day came, you would need to know the truth before it was too late." The queen stared at him, her heart torn between disbelief and a strange feeling she hadn't known in years. Hope. He reached into his satchel carefully and the guards tensed, but he only pulled out a small crystal sphere. It glowed faintly with golden light. "She left this for you," he said. The queen stepped closer. The sphere pulsed as her fingers brushed it. Then a soft voice filled the room. a voice she had not heard since childhood. "My little Sarava," the voice said gently. "If you are hearing this, it means you have grown strong. Do not let anger blind you as it once blinded our world. There is more to humans than fear, just as there is more to us than pride." The queen's knees weakened. She held the sphere close, tears forming in her eyes. The human stood silently, not daring to interrupt. When the message ended, Sarava looked up at him. "You could have hidden this. You could have used it as a weapon. But you came here knowing I might have you imprisoned or worse." He smiled faintly. "I didn't come to save myself, Your Majesty. I came to keep my promise to your mother." The queen turned away, trying to steady her voice. For years she had believed that strength meant ruling through fear, but now a single human stood before her, unarmed, unafraid, and truthful. "You walked into my palace when you could have fled," she said softly. "That is either bravery or foolishness," he smiled again. "Maybe both. But your mother believed you would listen. She was right." The queen stood silently for a long time. The crystal sphere still glowed faintly in her hands. Around them, the hall was quiet except for the sound of the wind outside. Finally, she said, "Guards, lower your weapons." The soldiers obeyed. The human let out a slow breath of relief. Sarava turned to him again. "You will stay here until I decide what comes next," she said. "But know this, I no longer see you as my enemy." For the first time, the human's eyes softened. "That is all I hoped for, Your Majesty." As dawn's light broke through the palace windows, Queen Sarava stood beside the man who had once been her target. The twin moons faded into the morning sky, and though she did not yet understand it, that single meeting would begin a story that would change two worlds forever. The great palace of Velrana was quiet when the dawn light touched its glass walls. Queen Sarava stood on her balcony, holding the small glowing sphere in her hand. All night she had listened to her mother's voice again and again. Every word carried warmth and truth that she had missed for years. The human who had brought it waited in a guarded guest chamber below. His name was Jalen. He had not asked for food or rest. He simply said, "When you are ready, Your Majesty, I will tell you everything." Sarava's heart was full of questions. Could her mother really be alive on Earth? Could the stories told by her council be lies? For years they had shaped her into a ruler who feared humans, who saw peace as weakness. But now she was not sure anymore. When the sun rose higher, she called for Jalen to be brought to the private garden behind the palace. It was a quiet place where silver trees shimmered and soft winds carried the scent of glowing flowers. When he arrived, he bowed low and she studied him carefully. He looked tired, his face marked by long travel, but his eyes were calm and kind. "Tell me everything," she said softly. "From the beginning," Jalen nodded. "Your mother, Queen Marielle, came to Earth 20 years ago," he began. "She did not come as a ruler, but as a woman seeking peace. She wanted to stop the fighting before it began. The council feared her choices, so they told everyone she had died. But she survived. When the worm gate collapsed, she stayed with us. She learned our language, our ways, and taught us yours. She built a small colony where humans and Velranians could live together. I grew up there." The queen's eyes widened. "You grew up with her?" "Yes," Jalen said quietly. "She became my teacher. She told me about you, how strong you were, how you always looked up at the stars as a child and wanted to fly. She said that one day when your people were ready, you would lead them not to war but to understanding." Sarava felt her throat tighten. For years she had worn her crown like armor, hiding the child who once dreamed. Now that same dream returned brighter than ever. "But why come now?" she asked. "Why risk your life to walk into my palace?" Jalen looked toward the distant skyline. "Because the council is planning something terrible," he said. "They want to reopen the worm gate, not to talk, but to attack. They fear what your mother built on Earth. They think if humans and Velranians ever truly join hands, they will lose control. I came to warn you before they act." Sarava's eyes turned cold. "The council serves me," she said slowly. "They cannot act without my command." Jalen met her gaze. "Are you sure of that, Your Majesty?" Her heart sank. For the first time, doubt entered her mind. She thought of the meetings she had missed, the sealed reports, the sudden silence when she entered the council chamber. Could it be true? She stood, turning away to hide the confusion on her face. "If you are lying, I will know," she said. "I understand," Jalen replied. "But you don't have to trust me. See it for yourself." That night, Sarava entered the secret communication chamber beneath the palace. a place known only to her and her top advisors. Using her royal code, she opened the sealed files Jalen had spoken of. Her pulse quickened as she read line after line of hidden plans: weapon transfers, energy conversions, and a new worm gate scheduled for activation within 3 cycles. It was all true. The council had planned war behind her back. Her hands trembled. "They betrayed me," she whispered. "They betrayed everything." The door behind her opened quietly. Jalen stood there, his expression gentle. "Now you see," he said. "They will destroy both worlds if no one stops them." The Queen turned toward him. "And you think I can stop them alone?" "You're not alone," Jalen said softly. "You have me. You have your people. And you have your mother's belief that one act of courage can change everything." His words filled the cold room like light. For the first time in years, Sirava felt something she had forgotten: hope. The next morning, she called a private meeting of the royal court. The council arrived in their long cloaks, confident and silent. They bowed deeply, but she saw the false respect in their eyes. "The human," one of them said quickly, "has poisoned your mind, Majesty. He must be executed." But Sirava stood tall. "You speak of poison, yet it is your lies that have poisoned this throne," she said firmly. "You hid the truth about my mother. You prepared a war behind my back. I will not allow it." The councillors froze. One tried to speak, but she raised her hand and the guard stepped forward. "You will answer for your actions before the people," she declared. "Velrana will not begin a war based on fear and deceit." The council members were taken away, their proud faces pale with shock. Jalen watched from the shadows, silent but proud. When the hall was empty, Sirava turned to him. "If what you said is true, then the worm gate must still be active somewhere." "Can we stop it?" He nodded. "If we work together, yes. I can guide your engineers, but it must be soon." That night, the Queen and Jalen stood side by side in the control chamber overlooking the horizon. The skies burned with storm clouds from the Council's secret tests. Together, they activated the signal that would shut down the energy lines feeding the worm gate. Sparks flashed across the screens. The ground shook beneath their feet, then silence. The glowing circuits dimmed and the storm faded. The weapon was disarmed. Sirava let out a long breath. "It's over," she whispered. Jalen smiled faintly. "It's only the beginning." They stepped outside, watching the stars emerge. The Queen looked up, her voice soft. "When I was a child, I used to dream that the stars were windows to other worlds. Now I know they are doors we must open carefully." Jalen looked at her with quiet respect. "Your mother would be proud." She smiled gently, the hard edge in her heart finally softening. "And what of you? Will you stay?" He hesitated. "If you'll let me. There's still much to rebuild: trust, friendship, peace. I can help." The Queen nodded. "Then stay. You are no longer my prisoner, Jalen. You are my guest and my ally." The wind swept through the balcony, carrying the scent of dawn. The silver towers of Velrana shimmered like starlight. Together they stood as equals, a human and a queen, united not by power, but by understanding. That day, the people of Velrana heard a new decree from their ruler. The gates of peace would reopen, not for war, but for unity. Many were uncertain, but hope spread like light across the world. And as the sun rose over the crystal horizon, Queen Sirava knew her mother's voice had not been a memory. It had been a guide. The story that began with anger had become one of courage. A young queen had chosen truth over fear, and a lone human had walked into her palace not to conquer, but to remind her of who she truly was. It was the day 2 worlds, Essie,